Imagine walking into a bakery in Budapest, August 1946. You ask for one loaf of bread. The woman behind the counter tells you the price, 600 billion pengő. You hand her a banknote with so many zeros it does not fit on a single line. 1 year earlier, the same loaf of bread cost 1 pengő. In 11 months, the Hungarian currency lost not 99% of its value, not 99.9%. The pengő lost 99.999999999% of its value. By the end, prices doubled every 15 hours. The monthly inflation rate reached 41.9 quadrillion %. The largest banknote ever printed in human history was Hungarian, 100 quintillion pengő, one followed by 20 zeros. This is not Zimbabwe. This is not Venezuela. This is the worst hyperinflation that has ever happened on Earth, and it destroyed a major European country in less than a year. Welcome back to Berloga. Today we walk you through the day money itself died. Not metaphorically, literally. The day a national currency became less valuable than the paper it was printed on. The day ordinary Hungarians used banknotes as wallpaper, as kindling, and as toilet paper, because that was cheaper than buying the actual thing. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how it happened, why it happened, and why every modern central bank has the same machine sitting in its basement, waiting for someone to turn it on. Let us start with the setup. In 1945, Hungary was on the losing side of the Second World War. The country had been invaded, occupied, bombed, and looted twice, first by the Germans, then by the Soviets. By the time the war ended, roughly 40% of Hungarian industrial capacity was rubble. The railway system was half destroyed. The bridges over the Danube in Budapest were collapsed into the river. 80% of livestock was gone. Almost all gold reserves had been moved abroad. And then came the bill. The Soviet Union, as the occupying power, demanded war reparations. $300 million worth paid in goods and currency over 6 years, to a country that had no goods and no functioning factories. On top of that, the Soviets imposed occupation costs. The Hungarian government had to feed, house, and supply the Soviet army that was sitting on its territory. So now the Hungarian government had 3 problems at the same time. No tax revenue, because the economy did not function. Massive obligations to the Soviets in currency the country did not have. And a population that had to be fed, clothed, and put back to work. Also paid in currency the country did not have. The government chose the only path open to a desperate state. It turned on the printing press. In the beginning, the inflation looked manageable. 5% a month, then 10, then 20. The government printed pengő to pay government workers, to pay soldiers, to pay reparations. Each new pengő reduced the value of every pengő already in circulation. By January 1946, inflation reached 100% per month. Prices were doubling every 30 days. By March, prices were doubling every 2 weeks. By April, every week. By May, the doubling time shrank to 4 days. By June, 2 days. By July, 1 day. By the final weeks of the pengő's existence, prices doubled every 15 hours. Let that number sink in. Every 15 hours. You go to sleep at night, and by the time you wake up, the price of bread has roughly doubled. By the time you leave work, it has doubled again. By the time you make dinner, it has doubled a third time. To put that in context, the most famous hyperinflation in history is Weimar Germany, 1923. The story everyone has heard. Wheelbarrows of marks, children playing with stacks of cash. At its peak, Weimar inflation hit 21% per day. The Hungarian pengő at its peak hit over 200% per day. Hungary was roughly 10 times worse than the textbook example everyone has heard about. If you earned a wage on Monday morning, that wage was worth half by Monday evening. By Tuesday morning, a quarter. By Wednesday, 1/16. By Friday, less than 1% of what it bought when you received it. So Hungarians did the only rational thing left. The moment you got paid, you ran. You sprinted to the nearest shop and converted every pengő you owned into bread, into shoes, into anything that would still be a real object tomorrow. Workers demanded daily payment, then twice daily payment, then morning and afternoon payment with a lunch break in between to spend it. Companies were paying out fresh currency to employees who were running to stores within minutes of receiving it. Cash had to be physically transported in increasingly large containers, wallets, then briefcases, then shopping bags, then suitcases. By the final weeks of the pengő, Photographs from Budapest show ordinary housewives wheeling entire wheelbarrows of banknotes down the street just to do the morning's grocery shopping. Restaurants invented a new pricing system. The menu listed two prices for every dish: the price when you ordered and the price when you finished eating. By the time the soup arrived, the chicken cost more than when you sat down. Money stopped being a store of value. Money stopped being a unit of account. Money was briefly only a hot potato. To keep up, the government had to print bigger and bigger banknotes. The 100 pengő note became useless. The 1,000, the million, the billion, the trillion. By July 1946, the Hungarian National Bank issued a 100 million pengő note, where pengő meant 1 trillion regular pengő. So 100 million pengő was 100 quintillion ordinary pengő, one followed by 20 zeros. That note had a printed face value bigger than the entire economic output of the United States in the same year, and it could not buy a single egg. People stopped counting. They stopped looking at the numbers. The banknotes became scenery. Old pengő bills were used to wrap fish at the market because the fish was more valuable than the paper. Children played with stacks of trillion pengő notes the way they play with toy money. Photographs from that summer show street sweepers shoveling discarded banknotes off the cobblestones of Budapest like fallen leaves. In a panic, the government tried one last trick. It created a second currency, side by side with the dying pengő. They called it the adó pengő, the tax pengő. The idea was clever in theory. Adó pengő would be indexed daily to keep up with inflation so that government tax collections, salaries, and contracts would not be wiped out overnight. For a few weeks, it appeared to work. Then the public realized that any currency the government controlled was a currency the government could destroy. So inflation immediately jumped onto the adó pengő as well. By the end, the adó pengő was also collapsing, only slightly slower than the original pengő. In August 1946, the Hungarian government finally surrendered. The pengő was abolished. A new currency, the forint, replaced it. The exchange rate at conversion was so absurd it is hard to read out loud. One forint was worth 400 octillion pengő. That is 4 followed by 29 zeros. The pengő had lost so much value that even reading the conversion ratio in a textbook today feels like a typographical error. And in the end, what destroyed the pengő was not the war. The war just lit the match. The thing that burned the currency to ash was the printing press inside the Hungarian National Bank, a machine no different in principle from the printing press inside the Federal Reserve, or the European Central Bank, or the Bank of England, or the Bank of Japan. Every modern central bank has the same machine. The only thing that protects you from a Hungary 1946 is political restraint, the decision by the people running the printer to not push the button as hard as they could. Restraint is a discipline. A discipline can be lost. It has been lost before. It will be lost again. And when it happens, the warning sign is not the inflation rate. The warning sign is the shape of the curve. Hungary did not go from 5% inflation to 40 quadrillion % overnight. It got there in 11 months, one doubling at a time. By the time anyone in Budapest said the word hyperinflation out loud, it was already too late to save the currency. The point of no return is silent. It arrives before the panic. So what does this mean for you in practical terms? It means money is not a thing. Money is a promise, and a promise can be broken even by the institution that made it. It means a printed currency is only ever as strong as the willpower of the people who control the printer. It means the only assets that fully escape a Hungary 1946 are assets the government cannot create more of. Hard money, real assets, things with finite supply. It means that if a country tells you the printing press is permanent, the answer is that nothing about printed money is permanent. The pengő existed for 20 years before it died in 11 months. Most national currencies in history have eventually been destroyed. The ones that survive today are the exceptions, not the rule. And it means that the next time a politician promises you that the money you hold will hold its value forever, you should remember that in 1946, a Hungarian could carry his entire life savings into a bakery, walk out with one loaf of bread, and consider it a good deal. The pengő is gone. The lesson is not take off the rose-colored glasses. Subscribe. I am going back into hibernation.